So, I thought it was time to probably do a proper road review of my Suzuki Jimny. We've got a wet day, a bit like when I did the new Defender review. In fact, this is the same junction. Just of note and interest, pulling out of here, there are no blind spots in this. The door mirror replacement on the new Defender really was not very good for junctions like that. But that's really an aside. This video is not about the new Defender, it's about Jimny. And this one is mine. So undoubtedly I'll be a bit biased in some of my views. But on the flip side, I've owned the vehicle for quite a few months now. Spent probably nearly 100 hours driving it. So I might be a bit more critical in areas as well, because I've had a lot more seat time with the vehicle. It's not been 100% plain sailing. Not all of it the vehicle's fault. I think COVID has impacted many people. Unfortunately, the dealership where I bought this closed down due to COVID. So I've had to change dealerships. Shame, but you know, life goes on. Meant I lost some money on a service plan. The new service plan is not as comprehensive and costs more with an alternative dealer. You know, it's not the best buying experience in the world. Suzuki haven't really done anything to help. Although in fairness, I'm not sure what they actually could do. I did have a problem with the vehicle as well. As you might see on some of my other YouTube content, it kept jumping out of low range when off-road. Very, very annoying. It meant the vehicle could only be used for limited activities. When I say off-road, you know, it was more extreme than doing a green lane. I think if you weren't using it off-road properly, you may not have noticed it ever. There are lots of people taking their Jimnys off-road, so I'm hoping it was just an isolated incident and not something that's going to impact lots of people. I've certainly not heard of anybody else with the same problem. So the dealership took a little bit of convincing on what the problem was, including actually taking a member of staff out on an off-road course and demonstrating it jumping out of gear or out of low range. As soon as it had done that, no problem, they had it in, took the transfer box out, stripped it down, and then decided they actually wanted to replace it. So they put a whole new transfer box in, which, you know, I'm quite pleased about. You know, it solved the problem, no more jumping out low. The car was away for about a week, but I did have a loan car. Unfortunately, as Suzuki don't really sell many Jimnys or any other 4x4s, a loan car was only an Ignis. Nice enough car, I'm sure, but not really me. So yeah, that's where we're at. The car's got 3,700 miles on it. I've owned it since March this year. We're now approaching the end of August. Due to lockdown, I perhaps haven't done the number of miles in it I would have expected to have done. But you know, I've tried to use the vehicle as much as I can, and for varied use. I've done just over 400 miles in a day. I've been on motorways, I've done lots of country road driving, I've done green lanes and some general off-roading in it. So you know, it's reasonably comprehensive. I've driven it on wet roads. There was a little bit of snow and sleet in March when I first got it, and of course days like today when it's very, very wet out. So what do I think? Well, my views haven't changed when I picked it up. It is still a tremendously fun car to drive. Every time you get in it, it's just fun. I can't say exactly what it is. It's just that sense of occasion and something about driving a proper 4x4. Some people don't get it, some people hate it. Personally, I absolutely love 4x4s to drive. You know, Land Rover Defenders, Jeep Wranglers, you know, classic Range Rovers, XJ Cherokees, they've all got that something about them that just makes them tremendous fun. They're not the fastest, they're not the most comfortable, they are just fun vehicles. And this Jimny is. I mean, in my own car collection, I have a sports car. I've also got an American import, Chevy Camaro. But if I'm honest, I smile just as much driving this as I do any of the fast cars, and probably more so because it's much more deployable and you can just have fun at any speed, but especially low speed. In terms of sort of road performance, the Jimny's not quick. I'd never say it was slow. I think that's unfair. I know there are lots of quicker cars these days, but you know, there's no trouble keeping up with modern traffic at all. It will sit 3 people up on cruise control at the legal 70 mile an hour limit on the motorway, no trouble. It's not that noisy. One thing I'd like to try and correct that you see and hear about in every other review is the fact that it's at 4,000 RPM at 60 mile an hour, and it's like, that's just not true. I'm at 60 now on the speedo and we're reading just under 3,000 RPM. For the 5-speed manual, the autos might be spinning over a little bit quicker, but there is no way on this earth that you're at 4,000 RPM to do 60 mile an hour. Not even 70. You need to be doing 80 mile an hour to get to 4,000 RPM on the tacho, which actually it will do quite happily as well if you want to, assuming you're quite happy with your licence, or on a private road. It's not the quietest of vehicles in here. There is a bit of noise on the transmission. We do have a bit of transmission whine. I think it's a transfer box more than anything, and I would say since they've changed the transfer box, I've noticed it more so. The engine itself makes quite a nice little grumble. So far more sporty than the Pascal credit for the 4x4. It's grunty, but as you can tell now, it likes to rev as well. And I think that is part of the fun factor. Is it's just eager, keen, and it doesn't matter if you know got it down at sort of 1,500 RPM, it will plod along happily, or if you're wanting to bounce off the red line at over 6,000 RPM. It's just enjoyable. I don't know what more you could really ask for a car, especially when it's comfortable, well attired, and economical to run. So, on those notes, my car is not 100% standard now. I've made a few changes to it, which we can go through later on. The most recent addition is some nice all-terrain tyres. I ummed and ahed quite a bit about what tyres to go for. Should I go for mud terrains? Should I go for all-terrains? In the end, I opted for a set of all-terrains. They're actually called Maxxis Worm Drive. Very similar tread pattern to the BFG KO2 all-terrain, but significantly cheaper. And they're very good on the road. I haven't found any real detriment in terms of road noise, comfort or handling, be it wet or dry. I did increase the size slightly. Again, this was a big sticking point for me. I originally wanted to go for a set of 235/75 15s, bearing in mind the original size is a 190/80 15. But I decided in the end to go for a middle ground and went for a 215/75 15. So they're a little bit wider than the standard tyre, and in theory should be slightly taller. I think it works out to be 11mm, or about just under half an inch. I think in reality they've turned out to be almost the same size. The speedo still reads exactly the same according to GPS. I was expecting to see a little bit of a change on the speedo, but it seems completely unaffected. I would say the tyres have blunted the performance a bit. A bit unexpected. I'm used to running big off-road tyres on my Land Rovers. I've been doing that for the past 23 years. I wasn't really expecting the performance drop, but you can definitely tell it's not as perky and peppy as it once was. Still goes well, and I think if you didn't have the back-to-back comparison you might not notice it, and maybe I'm just a little bit more sensitive to how the cars perform like that. On similar sort of note, I've also noticed that the MPG has dropped. We were sort of hovering around sort of 38, 39.5 MPG Imperial. If I actually just check now what we're at, we're down to 36.0. I think some of that is down to the extra drag of the tyres, but I think also the driving style has changed due to the blunted performance. I do find I'm driving it harder than I perhaps was. So we'll keep an eye on it. I don't think it's going to drop any more, but we've lost a good 2, maybe 2.5 mpg overall for sort of similar usage. I think there are plans in the work to, perhaps try and address the power at some point. Although one of the vehicles in warranty, I don't really want to do anything to jeopardise that. So any engine mods will be much further down the line. In terms of other things done to the car, not a great deal really. I think you might be able to see in the camera, I've got a little dash top tray here. Very, very handy. It was actually only £7 delivered from eBay. Probably the most cost effective and bang for buck mod I've ever done. And as you can probably see, I have my phone sat in the tray now, which is really good because there is absolutely nowhere else in this vehicle to put your phone. There's a small tray in front of the gear stick, but it's way too small to fit a modern smartphone in, so you're out of luck there. Or it's down in the drinks holder behind you. So I suppose that brings me around to complaints. Probably my single biggest issue with the vehicle is the lack of storage and the lack of power points in the vehicle, such as having nowhere to put your phone. The cup holders, while they're a good size, their location is behind your elbow, behind the handbrake, so they are useless unless you're parked up. I don't understand why they couldn't have fitted something on the dash or around near the gear stick more. And there's just a general lack of cubby storage. The door pockets are tiny. It all just seems not very well thought out from that respect. In fact, having had that little Suzuki Ignis as a courtesy car, you actually see how much better storage that has got. It's got door pockets that will take a drinks bottle, and it's got some cubby storage all around the front. Plus, it's got more USB ports in it. In this vehicle we're restricted to one USB port and nowhere to put your phone once you actually use it. Why Suzuki didn't think, oh, hang on a minute, this is actually the modern age, people do like to plug stuff in, people do have smartphones, maybe we should actually supply them with a little bit more ability to plug stuff in, but sadly that hasn't been the case. My only other real complaint, I think, with the interior are the sun visors. I think these two come from the Suzuki Ignis or other models in the Suzuki range, and there's nothing really wrong with them except for the fact they're way too small. I don't know if you can really see there, but there's a huge gap between the sun visor and the middle of the windscreen, and it just so happens that any time I've really needed to use the sun visor, the sun has just come in right past it in the gap. It's not a deal breaker. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. It's just one of those little touches that, actually you wish they hadn't cheaped out so much. If the car had cost me £50 or £100 more and had better sun visors in it, I don't think I'd really be complaining. Can't see it would cost that much more. Probably only talking sort of £2.50 or £5 really. But there we are. In terms of handling and ride, lots of people say these don't handle, or that they lean and they roll and they're uncomfortable. I can only assume that these people have never actually been in a vehicle, or just reading what somebody else has written once about a vehicle that was reviewed, back in the 1970s on leaf suspension driving down a kart track or something. I've found that it's actually quite compliant. It is a short wheelbase, it is a narrow vehicle, you are running off-road suspension and live axles. It is not going to be a Rolls Royce down the road, and there are certain road conditions that do show up the limitations of that design, but generally it actually handles the bumps really, really well. To compare directly to the little Ignis I had, I actually think this was a more comfortable vehicle for the majority of the road use I would be on. I also thought it was more refined and quieter than the Ignis. The Ignis definitely suffered a lot of tyre noise and a lot of suspension noise, which you don't really get in the Jimny. And I think that's true of other vehicles. The day I picked this up, I had a demonstration of a brand new Mercedes A-Class, and to be honest, it was horrible. That really did clamp and tramp and bump over every undulation in the road. It was sort of quiet, but it had weird wind noises and humming from the back. You just don't really get that in the Jimny. It's a nice vehicle to be in, and I think it handles really well. It's not a sports car, but it's fun. It's just got that type of handling that you enjoy driving and piloting the car. There's no other way of sort of putting it. You go and you throw it around some corners and you come out grinning ear to ear. And again, from a handling point of view, what more could you really want? It's not going to grip the most. We're not going to win any races on a going around the Nürburgring in this, but that's not what it's for. And to be honest, I'm probably never likely to go there in it anyhow. I am likely to drive a lot of country lanes where there's no podium, there's no prize money for getting to the end the quickest, but I'm certainly allowed to enjoy myself on those roads, and this is exactly what the vehicle does. It just makes cornering fun. You know, the steering's not got the most feel. It's an off-road vehicle. You know, we don't want the least levels of communication back through the wheel, but you know where the front wheels are, you know what the vehicle's doing, and it just doesn't lean much. I mean, throw it around this corner here, stayed pretty level to me. In fact, there are some videos on YouTube of these going round the Nürburgring. Quite why, I'm not sure, but you can actually see as they throw them around the corners on the racetrack, the vehicles just don't lean and roll and pitch as badly as anybody makes out. But you know, that's my own personal view on it. I'm sure people disagree, and I'm sure most of the people disagreeing are people that just probably haven't got a clue and have never been in one. Let's pull out on a little bit of country lane here, make use of some revs. So we're not the quickest vehicle in the world, the conditions are horrid. But it's just really fun. We're doing sane speeds, well, semi-sane considering the weather. Kind of makes you feel like a rally driver. Got any rally fans out there? It's Conor McRae or Tony Pondera. We're not quite getting the opposite look and sideways everywhere, but you know, it's just a fun little car. It has the added bonus that of course it's awesome off-road as well. Brakes are good. It's only got drums on the rear. I'm sure as life goes on they'll become probably more of a pain. You know, if you do lots of off-roading and they get mud and water in, drums are pretty nasty. But for a road car, drums are fine, brake pedal's good, good feel, not too sharp, don't fade. I think also you can probably hear on the camera that there's very few rattles and creaks going on. There's not much wind noise. Get it up to motorway speed, and yeah, the rain gutter and the mirrors and the general shape of the vehicle do all create a bit of wind noise. But you know, it's nothing unbearable. You can still hear the radio quite happily at 70 miles an hour, or hold a conversation with somebody in the back. But yeah, it seems to be well built together. I've got a load of stuff in the boot that might be sliding about in a minute, but no real creaks, rattles or complaints on that department. And just to compare, you know, it was only a week ago I tested the new Defender. It was a demo model, so maybe it's been abused a bit. 5,000 miles on it, so a few more than what this has got on it, and that had two distinct rattles on it, one from the back and one from the dash, and by the time I returned it, a new one had developed in the driver's door. Now, I'm a lifelong Land Rover fan. You I've grown up on a farm, learnt to drive before I was 11 in classic Land Rovers. My first car was a Land Rover Defender of 1997. Well, I was 1997, the car was a 94, 300 TDI. Most disappointed in the new Defender. It just has not done what I was expecting it to do, and the build quality just seems to be suffering as well. So here I am in the Suzuki, because Land Rover didn't have anything to sell me. But I'm not complaining at all, because I couldn't be happier that I've got a Jimny.